let's bring in Richard Torrenzano on the phone. He is a crisis management expert. He actually worked on the New York Stock Exchange issues and was also the communications director there for 10 years. He joins us on the phone right now. What do you make of the current situation?
Well, first of all, good afternoon. I'm resting on a boat today, and this is not good news. You know, I think they should have put more information out much more quickly than they did. I think we're an hour plus into this, and they're just starting to put out a second tweet. The transparency here, so everyone knows what's going on, is very, very important. There's a good and a bad side to this. The bad side is obviously that the exchange has stopped trading on all stocks. The good side is today they only account for about 20 or 25% of the market in their listed companies. The vast majority today of those shares are traded off exchange in smaller markets or in black pools. So, and I suspect that trading is going on. But what the stock exchange does do is provide a pricing mechanism that's very important to both individual and institutional investors.
Richard, you make such a good point. And by the way, the fact that you're on a boat, it's interesting because many Americans are right now. It's summertime, and that's what causes a bit of fear with the average investor and sort of dampens sentiment when we have these sort of things happen, whether it's a computer glitch or otherwise. You see this happen in the middle of the trading day, and you do worry. Are your investments safe? Is your money safe? I do want to say, Richard, that we have global reaction now happening to this. The CME Group, which is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the Chicago Board of Trade. This is the largest derivatives exchange in the world. They've issued a statement and made some adjustments based on this news. They are open for business. Their U.S. equity index futures are operating as normal, but they've reduced their price limits of 5% up or down due to the technical halt at the New York Stock Exchange, meaning they're watching the situation and they want to prevent any chaos there, so they're making adjustments. Richard, is this going to get resolved anytime soon, based on your experience?
We just don't know. You know, in my memory, something like this has not happened in probably 10 to 20 years. There are going to be technical glitches in markets from time to time. We're all, unfortunately, reliant on computers. We're going to see that whether we see it today or 2 years from now. It's going to happen from time to time. I think the big difference, though, here is that because of the world we live in, the global nature, the 24-hour nature, the terrorist nature of the world that we live in today, I think we need to put out more information very quickly on this. This will sort itself out. Everyone's investments are going to be just fine. There may be some difficulties. There may be some trading difficulties. There may be some challenges to some trading. It'll sort itself out. And I don't know if it'll sort out today, in the next hour, or it will sort out after the 4 o'clock close. But this is not the end of the world, and everyone should understand that. The American markets are very strong, and they will survive this as they've survived fires and other things as well.
Yeah, that's very helpful for people who are watching this. Richard, this is Harris Faulkner. I know a little bit about your background. I understand you were there actually for the last big crash. I want to mention this off camera. Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat in California, she's the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, has just said this is not an oddity. We need to deal with this. This is becoming every couple of weeks, and it has to end. What is she talking about that's been happening every couple of weeks, and why don't we hear about this?
I'm not sure what she's talking about, but I'm not sure half of the time what she's talking about. But I think that if you make the right investments, number one, in technology, these things should not happen often. But more importantly, when they do happen, you have to have immediate transparency in the world that we live in today so people understand what's happening, why it's happening, and what you're doing about it. I don't think the NYSE is doing that yet. Clearly, I heard the president had been briefed. That's an appropriate thing to do. I'm sure Treasury, SEC is involved with this. I'm sure there is enormous coordination with all of the trading firms throughout the nation and throughout the world. That's what's happening right now. Everyone is beginning to talk to one another.
Richard,
but the most important thing is for the NYSE to say what's happening.
Okay, Richard, I'm going to step in, but I'm going to hold you over for after the commercial break. Everybody stay tuned. Moments before the break, we were talking with Richard Torzano. He used to be the communications director for the New York Stock Exchange. We're going to bring him back in now. In fact, Richard, maybe you could, like tapestry, overlay your experience in the last big crash on today. I mean, this is not a crash, but this is a stop situation that clearly is going to affect a lot of people.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's a very good question. First of all, if you're concerned as an individual, if you're sitting as you're a viewer right now, you should be talking to your broker. They'll have a lot of answers about what to do and what not to do, and they're a professional, and they've been through this before. I am not concerned about the safety of anyone's investment. The second thing is what's happening behind closed doors. Everyone is beginning to talk to everybody. It probably started happening within the first 15 or 20 minutes. The trading firms are talking to the people on the trading floor. They're talking to their different trading desks around the world. The exchange itself is talking to the SEC, the other exchanges, including the futures and other exchanges. They're talking probably to the White House and to the Treasury. Everyone is beginning to talk to each other. I think, again, the issue here is what happened, why did it happen, and what are they doing about it? Simple questions that need answers that should have been put out 30, 40 minutes ago.
Yeah, and I know you're frustrated. One of the things that we've been talking about on the couch today with Sandra is the fact that you have so few people actually on the floor anymore. You know, these are not kind of the old days where you would have a big crowd on the floor there. You might even be able to get somebody on a cell phone, but that is not the case anymore. So now, Richard, I'm just wondering, you know, you say you talk to your broker. What are some of the questions individually we ought to be asking?
Well, first of all, everyone should feel secure that their investments are safe. Investments aren't going to go anywhere, okay? They're in your portfolio and they will be safe. You may not be able to trade today for the next hour or the next several hours.
That's not actually the case.
But you can trade on other markets. The pricing always would be difficult because the NYSE always sets the pricing in a very public way.
Well, Richard, just to avoid panic ensuing here, of course, call your financial advisor if you're worried about your investments. But if you do own stocks that trade on the New York Stock, you can still trade on other venues. That's why you see the Dow Jones Industrial Average moving like it is. Even though the New York Stock Exchange stocks are halted, you can still trade those stocks on other venues that are trading normally, like ARCA, for example. And by the way, there's a statement coming in from the SEC Chair, Mary Jo White. She's saying that they're in contact with the New York Stock Exchange. They're closely monitoring the situation. While the NYSE is working to resolve the situation, they are noting that you can trade these stocks elsewhere. Important to point out.
Richard, it's Bill Hemmer. Your point about putting out more information, I think has to be emphasized even more so than you have so far. You're more than an hour into this. No one knows what's happening. Very little information from the New York Stock Exchange. And the issue of trust and transparency in this great American institution must be upheld. Now, as an insider yourself, what do people need to know to make sure that their money's okay? In other words, do they need to be concerned right now? Or at the end of the day, did they figure, okay, this was just a blip? Because things like this, Richard, don't happen.
Well, first of all, they do happen. They haven't happened in many years, but they have happened before because of fires or other situations. So it's happened before. Maybe not in recent memory, but 10, 20 years ago, it has happened with a much bigger, more active exchange. Secondly, no one is going to lose any money here unless there's a trade involved. And that's why I think if you are trading today, you should be talking to your broker. The young lady earlier talked about other venues. There's probably 60 or 70 other venues today you can trade on. The New York Stock Exchange probably trades about 20 or 25% of the volume of their listed securities today, where 10 or 15 years ago, they traded 85 to 90% of the volume in their listed securities. So while it's down and the pricing mechanism is stayed a bit, everyone's investments are safe, and I think that's the very most important thing. You need to get off the authority.
The fact that the exchange has not put out more information leads one to conclude that they don't know what the problem is.
Well, they may not know what the problem is, but they probably have some ideas, and they probably have a good idea at this point of how long it's going to take to fix.
Richard,
don't forget, you have a new team down there now.
Yeah.
The exchange changed hands a year ago, and they haven't been. This new team has not had the experience.
Interesting.
Boy, that doesn't instill confidence.
Kind of activity.
Yeah, right. Well, that should be fine. But what we do know, and the New York Stock Exchange is making statements on this, is now they're saying that they have told an industry group that they have no timetable for reopening.